Hi, so welcome to our next series of Free Your Mind. Today we've got our guest speaker, Biraj from Innate Compass, who's a strength coach and also founder of the Men's Draw. He's here to talk about breaking the taboo in men's mental health. So over to you, Biraj.
Hi guys, so thank you very much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here, and I've watched lots of videos that you guys are doing, and it's really inspirational. So thank you very much. Yes, I'm here today really just to talk a little bit more about men's mental health and kind of breaking that taboo of guys in particular not feeling confident or having that kind of aspiration to want to just open up and talk about things that are going on in their mind, be that stress, anxiety, whatever it may be. And so yeah, thank you for allowing me the platform to be able to discuss this. It's such an important subject and affecting so many people that it's through platforms like this that we can really get the message out there. So thank you very much.
No, great to have you on. So we'll start off first by basically discussing. I know we spoke briefly before we had you on about your journey and your experience. So do you want to touch up on that, and then we'll take it from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a bit of background on myself. So I've spent the last 20 years in the corporate world from a technology background. And like a lot of people actually that kind of I tend to liaise with and sort of our generation, I find that we tend to kind of we fall into our careers, and that could be because of societal pressures. That could be because our parents force us down a particular route, and often people fall into a career like myself. I fell into IT, and I felt like I had to because a lot of people around me were in IT at that point. And then we spend the next 15, 20 years doing that particular thing. And a lot of people tend to get good at whatever that thing is, but it's not really something that they are passionate about, or it's not really something that they really have a real purpose and value behind. It's just something that they've done for so long and just happen to get good at it, that basically they fall into this trap of then getting to a point where they're not really enjoying what they're doing. They're not really passionate about what they're doing. And it becomes a job rather than something, a living, so to speak. And what I'm finding, and I went through this myself actually, was that I got to that point where, there was something missing in that particular occupation. And I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know why I was feeling the way that I was. But what I did know was that I still felt like I had a family to support. I had to put food on the table. We all have bills and things like that that we have to continue paying. And that's not to say that I'm the only breadwinner in the family, but maybe it's just again a cultural or societal thing where, as a man, you feel like you have to provide for the family. And what I find is a lot of people then end up doing these things that are sort of slowly chipping away at them, but feel like they have no choice but to carry on. And I was on a walk one evening with my wife, and I was a little bit down. I wasn't feeling myself because of all of these kind of emotions that were building up over the last sort of 20 odd years of working, and the last 2 years in particular, where I felt like there was something missing. And she said to me, she goes, "Oh, what's the matter? You don't seem yourself." And my default answer, we've been married for 14 years, and I'd like to say that we have an open relationship, but my default was, "Oh, nothing's wrong, I'm fine." And she clearly knew I wasn't fine because of my mood and the way that I was. And I was like, "No, no, it's all fine, no worries." And she kind of said, she goes, "Oh, you never open up about how you're feeling." And it literally, the following day, I was on a Zoom call with three of my friends, just again, kind of in the current pandemic, just to connect and kind of say hi and have a bit of downtime. And one of my friends was again not himself, and we asked him what the problem was, and his default again was, "No, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I'm fine." And we kept pushing and kept pushing. And finally, he goes, "Do you know what? I'm just feeling a little bit down right now, because my job may be at risk of redundancy, And if I lose my job, then I'm not quite sure how I'm going to put food on the table, and I'm not quite sure what the outcome of this is going to be. And he eventually, through lots of pressure and pushing, kind of opened up slightly to tell us what was wrong. And it just made me think that this wasn't coincidence. Kind of like two events, one after the other, was a sign for me that there's just too many guys out there that don't talk about how they feel. And so it inspired me to go and create a Facebook group, which I call the Man Draw Discussions, to be able to be a place for guys to talk about how they're feeling and talk about things that they wouldn't usually feel comfortable talking about. But I wanted it to be a space that's open, transparent, but also non-judgmental, so that nobody feels like they can't talk about specific things. And I call it the Man Draw Discussions because you guys may be able to relate to this. I don't know if you've got partners that have the same. I'm pretty sure they will. But we all have this one drawer in the house, the Man Drawer, and it's literally that one place where we just dump loads of random things, from mobile phones to receipts to, I don't know, currency that we haven't used for the last 10 years. And it's just like batteries and that kind of stuff. It's that one place where we just dump all of our stuff. And I wanted to create one space where, again, we could just have loads of random conversations about so many different things. And I was really humbled by the take up of the group. And within a matter of weeks, it grew to 350 members. And we've got members from Australia, we've got members from the US, we've got members from India, we've got members from the UK. And the conversations that take place, they vary, right? We've got conversations about how people are dealing with miscarriages, because all the focus is on their partners during that sort of traumatic time. We've got conversations around the power of having a coach in your life and how that can help people. The other day we had someone post on saying, has anyone been through a divorce? Because I'm going through one right now and I'm really kind of struggling about how to go through this. And the beauty of it was that within minutes, literally, there were like 10, 15 people commenting saying, you know what, I'm going through this myself right now, or you know what, I went through a divorce myself last year and this is how I dealt with it. And it's just that knowing that you're not the only person that's going through this stuff is a reassurance in itself. And then when someone can actually give you some practical advice and some friendship to be able to get through that, it just makes it that much easier. All the way through to having some really just light-hearted banter, like, guys, we're in lockdown, I really need a haircut and I haven't got a clue what clippers to buy. Has anyone got any suggestions? The kind of things that like we maybe wouldn't feel comfortable talking to our partners about. So I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is that I wanted to create a space where it's okay for guys to talk, because I think we live in a world where stereotypically guys, and certainly in the Asian culture as well, it's not okay to say you're not okay. We have to show this kind of macho persona. We are the main breadwinners and all that kind of stuff, which is total rubbish, right? Because so many females in the world are doing fantastic and are also main breadwinners in lots of households. So I think the world has changed, but unfortunately the perception of guys in particular in our own minds maybe hasn't moved with the times. And the problem is that with that pressure, with the job pressures, with that pressure of being the main breadwinner, but also just other things that are going on and us not opening up about how that feels, it slowly starts to add up. And then it starts getting to a point where it starts becoming really concerning, because the rate of male suicide, for example, is just so high that it's a build-up of all of these things. It's not just one thing, it's a build-up. And I just want to be able to help create a platform that can maybe combat and break that taboo of us being okay to open up and speak and how we feel. So that's kind of how I got to the Man Draw Discussions. And my coaching in particular, I stepped out of the corporate world because it was really chipping away at me. And it was a really tough decision, and a really scary decision as well, because I've gone from a well-paid job with stability to starting my own business. But I can't tell you how much of a weight off my shoulders it's been to be able to now do something that really has a purpose in what I believe in. And my coaching is solely focused on helping people to maximize their potential. It's not just for men. I have women clients as well, but being able to help people maximize their potential, and if I can, tap in the male demographic in particular for that as well, then that just contributes even further to what's going on in the Mandrill discussions group.
Biraj, I've got a question for you, just
Sure.
based on what you've been saying. So I think earlier on, where you spoke about, your wife recognizing that, you don't open up as much as you could do. So that having that self-reflection is really important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you have it when you recognize it yourself, or I'm thinking you need somebody to point that out to you, and then for us to then address it and think, actually, we need to do something about it. So my question really is how can we, or from your expertise and experience, having that recognition, I think, is quite difficult. So how can we encourage people to maybe have greater self-awareness, and therefore encourage that recognition of actually, not that there's a problem, but maybe I might need to open up, or maybe I might need to talk about how I'm feeling?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think so. In my coaching space, I specialize in strength coaching, and strength coaching essentially is very much around. So people automatically think personal training. It's not personal training. It's about using a strength mindset. And what I mean by that is that we all have our own unique talents and our own unique strengths, but a lot of us don't actually really understand what they are, because sometimes they're so innate and so natural that it's almost like we take this stuff for granted. And my coaching is very much focused on helping people to understand who they are and embrace those talents and those strengths and make the most of that to be able to reach your potential. But what that means inadvertently is that we are great at certain things, but we're not great at everything. And it's that realization that you don't have to be great at everything. And there's certain things that don't come naturally to us, and that's okay. And it's okay to say, you know what, I'm struggling in this area, or, I'm struggling with this particular event because that's not a natural strength of mine, or that's not a talent that I have. And, you can apply that to so many different facets in terms of personal relationships, corporate work life, business, friendships, whatever it may be. But I think it's about just understanding and accepting that we can't be great at everything. And it's this, I think it comes back to that societal pressure as well. And it probably goes back in generations, where the man of the house has to, be the one that can fix something when it's broken, can bring the money in, can do this, that, and the other. I'll openly say, and this is a proud moment for me, because I put this up myself. And do you know what? It took me hours to do it. And do you know what? I'm not ashamed to say that, right? It was 4 kind of holes I had to drill, and it took me a while to do it because I wanted to make sure it was all kind of level and stuff like that. But ultimately, that's not a strength of mine. DIY, I could not think of anything worse. I hate it. But that stereotype of, oh, what do you mean you can't put a shelf up? Or it's okay if you don't know how to do that. One of the guys in our group, he actually he approached me separately, actually. And we were talking, I can't remember, we were talking about like exercise and cycling and stuff like that. And we talked, and he was saying something about how the bike was really kind of like hard to pedal. And I had a conversation with him separately, and I was like, I'm not quite sure what you mean by this. He's like, yeah, so it's really tough. I was like, just change the gear or make it lighter. And he looked at me like in astonishment, and he didn't know his bike had gears. And he didn't know how to change the gears, right? And it's just like, that sounds like, oh my God, that's really stupid. How didn't know that? But you can't take this stuff for granted. And there's no way that he would have felt comfortable, because it's not the macho thing to say, oh, sorry, I didn't know my bike had gears, right? It's just, you know, he's not a cyclist. He bought a bike off the shelf from Halfords type of thing, just to be able to get a bit of exercise, but he didn't really know how to use it. And that's okay. But it's little things like that. It's such a small example, but little things like that, where if you're not comfortable to be able to ask those questions, then what about the bigger things, the things where you're really struggling? You know, I don't know how to get out of this really bad work situation that I'm in, or I don't know how to overcome this feeling that I have about, you know, my self-worth or whatever it may be. Like, if we can't be comfortable asking questions, then, you know, we're fighting a losing battle. And so it's all about creating platforms where people feel comfortable to ask those questions. You know, that saying where there's no such thing as a stupid question, yet so many people won't ask the stupid question because they feel like they're going to get judged. So, you know, this was very much about me trying to just create an area where there is no such thing as a stupid question. And what's amazing is when that stupid question gets asked, there's so many people that also don't know the answer to these things. And all of a sudden now it's like, it's okay that I don't know that the bike had gears, because there's a bunch of other people that also didn't know that, and I'm not the only one. And I think it'll just take time to be able to kind of get that out there. But I think just the judgment is the biggest thing for me. And, you know, it's that people that frown upon you because you don't know how to do this, or, you know, societal pressures of, oh my God, you know what, he's the house husband and his wife is working, or, you know, these types of things, that it doesn't help us at all. And that's the thing we have to break. There's a cultural element here that we have to break. And that's the tough part, right? That's what we're all still trying to figure out how to do.
So you touched on a couple of things there. One of them being stereotypes. You know, how or what do you think can be done to break those stereotypes? And, you know, what, as a society, and not only as a society, as our generation of Asians as well, within our culture as well, what can we do to make sure future generations, and, you know, break that, so going forward we kind of, I suppose it may be hard to eliminate, but definitely I suppose lessen the effects of it, or lessen the numbers of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what you guys are doing with this platform is a really great start towards that. It's like, you know, people being able to share their journeys, share their vulnerabilities as well. I think, you know, that's a big part in that, like people understanding it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to say that, you know, you're not okay. And it's important for us to be able to pass that down to the future generations as well. So, you know, I have two boys, and, you know, it's okay for my son to, I don't know, not like football, for example, and like doing something else instead. And it's difficult. And, you know, I fell foul of this myself. I'm so into football, and as a default, I was like, well, my son must also like football. And so, you know, I put him into a football club, and don't get me wrong, he enjoys playing football, but he's not passionate about football like I am. And, you know, I've come to understand over time that actually, you know what, that's okay. Let him go and play football and be like, enjoy the experience of playing football. But you know what, if his team loses a match, he's not that kind of, he'll be fine within 5 minutes. When I played football for a club and we lost, I wouldn't be fine for the next 5 minutes. You know, I wouldn't be fine for the next 5 days if I knew that we didn't give it our all, and, you know, kind of. But that's just, again, it comes back to individual talents and individual strengths, right? He has his talents and strengths in different areas, and it's important for me as a dad to be able to understand and be okay with whatever his talents and strengths are. He's hugely creative, and he loves like building things with Lego, or he's recently got really into painting and drawing, and that's okay, right? It's got to be okay. And if he sees that I'm showing him that it's okay to do that, then hopefully he'll feel comfortable to be able to, you know, express himself in the way that he wants to express himself, for example. So I think it's just getting the message out there, and, you know, showing that vulnerability, and helping people to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. But then it's important for us as a generation to be able to break that that norm and break that taboo of it's not okay for us to open up, by explaining to the next generation that it absolutely is.
Yeah, I completely agree, Biraj. I think the way that you mentioned about your own sons, and it's very much about the environment that you're brought up in, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned earlier at the start about how, you fell into a career where, you felt that, IT, it was one of the careers that, Asian men happened to fall into. And we're almost forced down these career paths. But within your own household, you're making changes and you're looking at this, the different things that your children enjoy. But how do we get the message out that this is the way that we need to raise our children, and this is how we need to educate our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, whoever it is, our friends, that our children need to be doing something they enjoy? Because ultimately what led you down to that path was you were doing a career that you weren't particularly enjoying, which then led to mental health problems. So how do we get that message out there that it's really important that from a young age, children are doing something that they enjoy and they're following a career path that they'll enjoy?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tough, right? It's really difficult to try and sort of break that way of thinking. I often tell a lot of my coaching clients, and I refer to this term of well-roundedness. We hear it a lot, and we all, lots of parents will strive for their children to be well-rounded. But actually, if we think about what does well-rounded mean, you could argue well-rounded means average across lots of things. And I think that's the point, and that's the philosophy around strengths as well, is that don't strive to be average across lots of things. Identify what it is that comes naturally to you. Identify the things that give you the most excitement, motivation, and passion, and allow the next generation to follow those dreams in those areas. Because the research shows that if you're operating in an area of strength, then your energy is high, your motivation is high, your efficiency is high, and ultimately the results that you produce are high. And there's no coincidence that if you do something that you love, you get good at that. And if you're good at something, it's because you're doing what you love in order to make that particular thing good. And so it's about identification, and it's about allowing to follow whatever those dreams and passions are. And those dreams and passions don't have to be IT, medicine, accountancy, the stereotypical things. It's okay to be other things, and it's okay to be different. And that's what kind of like, I'm trying to teach my children as well, that it's okay if you want to do X instead of Y, it's okay to do that. You don't have to follow the mold. You don't have to follow everybody else. But it's tough, and sometimes environments and situations can mold that as well. So my father passed away when I was only 2 years old, to the point where I don't even remember him. I have pictures and I have stories that people tell me about him, but I have no recollection of my time with my dad. And you know what? Maybe that's why I'm not very good at DIY, because I never had that male role model growing up. Now, yes, my uncles and my cousins and that were there, but they don't live with us day in, day out. And my mum did a fantastic job in trying to fill both shoes. But sometimes, I still remember the days, for example, at school sports day, or during a football match, where all of my other friends' dads were there at the game on the sideline, and my dad wasn't. Or on Father's Day, when everyone's making kind of Father's Day cards and stuff like that at school, and I remember that distinctly. And what that's done for me is that's changed my perspective on certain things, such as it's really important for me to be at my son's school assembly, for example, or it's really important for me to be able to go to the Father's Day event at the school. And sometimes we find that actually our career choices stop that. Having to ask your employer to take some time off to go and see your son's school play. And if for whatever reason you're not able to do that, that can also have a kind of a negative impact internally as to, oh my God, I wasn't there for my son during that time, for example. Now it's more raw for me because I grew up without that. And that may not be the case for everyone, but there will be certain events in people's lives that, you know, will trigger certain feelings and motivations. And again, it's just about being open and honest about that, but breaking that kind of taboo and getting that message out there. I mean, that's the tough part that we're all trying to crack right now. And I think what you guys are doing is fantastic. Just getting the message out there even more that it's okay for us to feel down. It's okay for us to be able to show our emotions, and then pass that on to the next generation, because that's the only way. If we carry on thinking the same way that our parents did, then our children will do the same, and we'll just be in this vicious cycle. It has to break somewhere. And I think, you know, it's down to us to break it.
Okay, so I've got another question. I know you've already touched on it. The men's draw.
The man draw.
Men's draw Facebook group. Okay.
Yeah.
You kind of already said, you know, you've got people from all over the world in there. And you've said what started that. How, I mean, it's been a while since you started that. So I think when we initially spoke,
it was in the first lockdown. Yeah, I started it in the very first lockdown. Yeah.
So what are the results of it now? So obviously I'm assuming it's grown a lot more. Like you said, you've got people from all over the country in there, all over the world rather, and it's just men in there. But what's the result of it as it's grown, and what kind of impact has it had, not only on yourself but also, I suppose, the individuals in the group as well?
Yeah, no. So firstly, there was no intention necessarily for that to be 3 million people, right? Like, whether there was 3 people, 30 people, 300, 3 million, that the objective of it was that even if it can help one person get out of a, you know, sort of a tricky kind of situation in terms of their mental health and how they feel, then it served its purpose. You know, it grew to around 350 people, which is great. But what's been the most rewarding about that, and kind of to your question about what impact has it had, I've had people reach out to me that I don't even know, but they're on that group, and they've messaged me privately to say thank you, because there's been a particular thread on that group or a particular discussion that has been had that has really helped them during the time that they're in. And so I've had people reach out and just say thank you for this group, because, you know, that conversation has really helped me with what I'm going through right now. I've had other people contact me saying that sometimes when they feel down, they just jump onto the group and they just scroll through some of the messages and the threads that we have on there, because it reminds them of the fact that other people are going through similar sort of situations and that he's not the only one that's feeling like that. So he's using the group almost as a, you know, like a means to be able to pick his mood back up when he feels down. We've had some, you know, we had one success story recently where I just basically on the group thought, okay, you know what, we've all been on here for a while. No one really knows what each other does. Let's just all tell each other what we do for a living. And there was one guy who mentioned that he was working in a particular field. There's another guy who happened to be recruiting for someone in that particular field. They connected, and basically this guy's landed his dream job, and the guy that was looking for that particular role has found the perfect candidate. And they both messaged me separately saying thank you again, because they didn't know each other before, but they connected via my group. So, you know, there's so many different ways in which the group has helped people. And, you know, a lot of people say to me, oh, okay, well, so, you know, how are you going to monetize it? And, you know, what are you going to do with that? And I'm like, the intention of it is not to monetize it. The intention is to help, right? I get nothing from that in terms of monetary value. What I get from that is a deep satisfaction that I'm helping people. And that was the purpose of it. And that will remain the purpose of it. And what that's done is that's now grown into 2 weeks ago, we had our very first man draw discussion Zoom call, where I literally just created a Zoom session and I basically put it on there to say, right, whoever's free at this time on this day, just jump on a call, because you know what, it'd be great to put some faces to names and stuff like that. And I did it on a weekend because I wasn't sure what days and times would work best for people. So I was like, right, okay, pick a date, pick a time. We had about 15 people that jumped on the call, and literally there was 2 guys on that call who hadn't met each other for 15 years, and they reconnected after 15 years. We had another guy on there that I used to go to school with, but I went to first school with him, and I haven't spoken to him since. And now, like, you know, he's a doctor. And it's just kind of, again, it's just connected people, and it's allowed us to be able to just, again, feel like, you know what, we're not on our own here, and there is other people that are going through the same emotions and the same feelings. And what we've committed to doing now is at least once a month, I'm just going to create a Zoom call again, and whoever can turn up can turn up. If it's 2 people, that's fine. If it's the whole 350 people, then we'll deal with that as well. But you know, it's just an opportunity for people to just get a little bit of release from everything else that's going on and just talk about stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to see what that might turn into and where that might grow. The other thing that it's done actually for me is it's given me the opportunity to come onto people's Facebook lives and platforms like what you're doing. I've been invited onto certain podcasts, just to be able to talk about this as well. So again, to help get that message out there, you know, people have found out about the group, and they've told people who have told people, and then they contact me to say, would you like to come on and talk about your journey? So so yeah, you know, if it can help even one person, it's great. If it can help more, then that's fabulous.
Biraj, so like that's, I mean, you know, the impact that you're having, I think I could see all 3 of us nodding our head going, you know, that's amazing, you know, that's brilliant. But it was a massive step when you spoke about your initial journey on moving away from the corporate world and you know, earning more money, or earning a lot of money, so coming from a lucrative salary to then taking the plunge to want to pursue like your passion. That's a really big step, and it's something that I can resonate with. From, like, I was a former deputy head and then took the plunge on, I really wanted to pursue a career in football. But that also requires, unless, and then correct me if I'm wrong, I think you know, a lot of character strengths to be able to do that, and then you need support around you to help you through those, you know, those highs and the lows. What advice would you give? So there's 2 parts to my question really. So one is about, what advice would you give to people that are listening in who have a passion towards a particular subject matter or thing, but working in something completely different, in kind of getting them to think, you know what, no, you can do it, and tying it into those characters, you know, those strengths, the strengths that you spoke about. And then the other part to my question is, how, you know, how difficult was that move to come away from working full time to not, because that's a big jump.
Yeah, no, definitely. And by far, it's been one of the most scariest kind of decisions that I've had to make as well. So first of all, you referred to support there. Like, I couldn't have made that decision, and I couldn't have done what I did without the support of my wife. And you know, I'm hugely grateful to her to be able to support my decision. It was hard because, again, like, so she left a corporate job 2 years ago to be able to start her own business. And you know, at that time, it was kind of, the roles were reversed a little bit, and I was there to be able to support her and really sort of encourage her to do that, which was fantastic. But what happened during that 2 years was that I could see that she was living her dream of running her own business, and I was stuck in a job that I was hating. But I wasn't able to take the plunge to then go and pursue my own dreams, because we still have bills to pay, and we still had, you know, mortgages to cover, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And I think that again was a contributing factor to how I was feeling, because I was essentially stuck in this trap of having to do something that I wasn't passionate about anymore, but I had no choice but to do it. And that walk where she said you don't open up, to then leading to creating the Facebook group, to then understanding actually it's important for me to open up, led to exactly that. It meant that I was more comfortable to talk to her about how I was feeling and what I wanted to do. And yes, I wasn't able to do it immediately, but when I felt frustrated or I felt stressed or I felt anxious, I was more comfortable to tell her, this is how I'm feeling. And almost like, look, I apologize for maybe being a little bit snappy today, or I apologize for not being myself. This is just what's going on. This is how I'm feeling. And she's like, okay, right, I get it now. So I'm not going to keep kind of asking you, what's the matter? What's the matter? I get it, right? And that communication is absolutely key. So that support is crucial. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I find a lot of guys in particular, I for one, I don't have a few really close friends. I have lots of kind of acquaintances or friends kind of thing, but I don't have, like, that one best buddy that you just always pick up the phone to every other day and you're talking on. And maybe it's more of a female thing, I don't know, but like guys tend to have kind of broader sort of friend groups as opposed to one or two really close friends. And so my go-to person in that respect, if you ask me who's my best friend, I would say my wife. But there's certain things that I just don't want to talk to my wife about because I feel like I can't put that burden on her at the same time. And that, that's the $1 million question that we need to try and break, is that how do we allow people to have a support function where they do feel comfortable to talk about those things. And things like my group was a route towards getting to that. So support, whether that's your partner, whether that's your friends, whether that's something external, it doesn't really matter, but that support is hugely important, I think, to be able to help people make certain decisions and cross that barrier of corporate to entrepreneurship, or this job to that job. So I think that's crucial. But the other part of the question very much is around kind of how did I how did I do it, right? And it just got to a point where you have to sometimes just pursue that passion. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop doing what you're doing and then start doing what you're passionate about. There's so many different ways that you can do that. Like, look to pursue your passion in some sort of side gig. Look to just volunteer or help other kind of charities or groups that are doing similar stuff to what you want to do. Because again, coming back to that strength and passion piece, what energizes you and what will get you out of that rut is doing the things that you enjoy doing. And usually, if you think about why you're in that rut in the first place, it's probably because you're doing something that you're not passionate about, or you're doing something that doesn't excite you. And from going from teaching, for example, like yourself, into football, that can't have been like an overnight passion. You must have had a passion for sport and football for some time. And there would have been something that triggered your thought process to say, right, I'm going to take that move. But I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've probably been involved in football in some way, shape or form for some time. And your passion has grown to a point where you're like, right now, I get so much energy when I'm doing this, and I don't get energy when I'm doing that, that at some point the balance has to shift, and the weighing scales tip over, and that makes you think, right, you know what, I now need to do this. Now, coincidentally, mine happened when I was 40, and my wife always jokes and says it was like kind of a midlife crisis type thing. And maybe it was, right? I don't know. But it took me 40 years to make that switch. And you know what? It's, as much as it's been scary, and as much as my income has gone from that to that, eventually that income will grow, right? And that income will grow because I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. And so yeah, it's been the scariest time of my life, but also it's been the most rewarding time of my life as well, because I really feel like I can provide people with value now. And giving value. I read a book called The Go-Giver. I'm not sure if you've ever come across it. It's by a guy called Bob Berg, and it very much talks about value and giving, and specifically talks about how your true worth is in the amount of value that you give versus the amount of payment that you take. And so ultimately what he's saying is, if you provide a service or you provide a product of, I don't know, call it £100, then give £150 worth of value. Because the more value you give, the more you will receive in different ways, not just monetary, but you'll receive praise that some people may need. You receive recognition that some people may need. You receive, outcomes, or you see people doing things that are changing their lives, that then gives you that motivation and that enjoyment. So it's all about giving value, and how you do that can be done in so many different ways. And so if you are in a corporate role, or if you're in any role that you're not maybe hugely passionate about, and you feel like you want to pursue another passion, it's not a black and white, stop doing what you're doing and move over. There are ways in which you can get into this. And also, I think, if you work for a progressive organization, more and more companies now allow people to kind of pursue multiple things and pursue outside interests. And sometimes they encourage it. If you're doing something that's charitable or has a good cause behind it, then sometimes they encourage that. Any fundraising, a lot of companies will match nowadays. My previous company used to give us 2 days a year to be able to go and do charitable work. So there's so many different ways in which you can do that now, that you can start to pursue those passions. And then let the journey find its own endpoint, and start getting involved in this, and you never know where it comes from. This time last year, if I had a look at my life, I was in a typical corporate role. Today, I'm no longer in that corporate role. I've got my coaching practice. We started another side business where we help children learn to code between the ages of 5 and 15. And I also do some advisory and non-exec director work as well, to help organizations get fulfill their potential. And never in a million years did I think that within a span of 1 year, I could do that. And ultimately, the trigger point for that was my wife giving me a kick up the backside and saying, "You never open up." That spurred me to go and pursue my dreams and start to open up to her. And it was through her support that I've managed to get to where I've got to.
Yeah, that's great, Biraj. I think from just hearing what you're saying, you can tell how much the career change just helped you personally. And what's really happened is you are now a role model, and that's the most important thing, is we need to be role models for the younger people.
Definitely.
Another question I was going to ask is, the group that you've created, the Man's Draw, how many South Asian men are in that group? And if there are, how are they interacting in the group? Do you notice any differences between them and maybe people from the white community?
So it's a very diverse group, actually, first of all. So we do have all colors and creed kind of in the group itself. It's probably more skewed towards the Asian community, South Asian in particular. And I do find actually that it just takes one person to then allow others to open up. So if I kind of put a post out there about a particular topic, you may find that no one responds. And then you just get that one person that's just got the guts to kind of say, yeah. And then all of a sudden you get another 10 sort of comments afterwards. So again, I think that is just a cultural thing, right? Where we don't typically kind of, willingly open up. But it's getting better. And, more and more now you get people, I don't have to instigate conversation. When I first started the group, you almost, to get it going, you have to ask questions and post a lot and things like that. Now it's become kind of self-fulfilling, and I don't feel like I have to constantly post, because people do that naturally themselves. And even the frequency of the post, to me, it doesn't matter. We might go 2 weeks without anyone posting anything, we might go a week with 10 different posts on there as well. So it doesn't really matter. But then what's inspiring is that we are getting people from other cultures also, heavily contributing. And, when this whole kind of Black Lives Matter was really sort of prominent in the news, I actually had one person from the white community basically put on the group how he didn't quite know how to deal with this, because he felt like it was fake of him to start putting kind of Black Lives Matter just because everyone else is doing it. He goes, I don't want people to feel like I'm kind of fickle in any way. I have lots of Black and Asian friends already. I don't have a racist bone in my body, but it feels wrong of me to now start talking about Black Lives Matter. Actually, I probably should have been talking about this ages ago, because, I have so many friends that kind of come from an ethnic minority background. And so he kind of just put it on the group and said, guys, look, I'm not quite sure what to do here, because I feel like if I now start advocating Black Lives Matter, it's almost a little bit hypocritical of the fact that I should have been doing this ages ago. I almost felt guilty for supporting Black Lives Matter. And he just put it out there and said, guys, I'm feeling a little bit down and I don't quite know what to do in this situation. And most of the response back was from people of an ethnic minority that basically said, look, don't worry about it. The most important thing is that you don't have a racist bone in your body, that you do have friends who are Black and Indian and whatever it may be. And, and also respect the fact that he actually just put it on the group and actually talked about the fact that I'm not quite sure how to deal with this. And I don't think that would have been a conversation he would have had with his wife. I don't think that would have been a conversation that he would have had with his colleagues. Yet he had the confidence to put it in a Facebook group with another 350 people that he didn't really know. And for me, that was just like, wow, like we've created something quite special here that has allowed people to be able to have the confidence to even say that. And I don't know what that special ingredient was, but there's something that's happened in that group over time that has allowed people to open up. And if I could package that up in a jar, I'm sure I'd be a millionaire. But we don't know what that is. But there's something natural and organic that has happened there, which is really refreshing to see. And for me, it's just served the purpose of what I intended to do, which was help people. And that could be in so many different ways. But yeah, it is a tough one. It is a tough one, and it's not talked about or accepted enough right now. I think also, what we've been talking about today is, I think, more surface level stuff. Like there's much more sort of clinically related mental health, and specifically within men as well. What I'm trying to do, and I'm no expert when it comes to men's mental health as such, but basically what I'm trying to do is get it to a point where we can almost nip it in the bud before it gets to that stage. Like, if people don't feel comfortable to talk about stuff, then it all starts to build up, and then it starts to build up further, then it starts to build up further. And then it gets to the point where people start thinking about suicide, or it turns into something a lot more severe. And when it gets to that stage, it's tough, but there are more channels and more official channels to go to be able to help with that stuff. But I think the issue is, how can we prevent it even getting to that stage? And sometimes it's just being able to open up and talk about it. Don't hold it in, just talk about it, because sometimes when you just talk about it, you feel that kind of pressure and that relief. I had a conversation yesterday for 3 hours, and I talk about, I kind of contradict myself a little bit here, because I talk about I don't have a best friend as such, but he was my best man at my wedding. We lived together for 4 years at university. Obviously, everyone kind of gets into life, and it becomes really difficult to catch up as much as we can. But it was his birthday the other day. I dropped him a message to say happy birthday. He was like, "Oh, we haven't spoken for ages. Let's catch up." And what was supposed to be a quick catch up turned into 3-hour conversation. And you know what? We talked about loads of different things, but I just felt so good at the end of it. And we didn't, he didn't fix any problems of mine. We just had a good conversation about so many different things. And, he was telling me about how his mum and dad caught COVID and how it was really, right, this is a great example, actually. I'm glad this has kind of come up. So I consider him a good friend. He considers me a good friend. I didn't even know his parents had COVID, right? It's kind of like, and he was my best man. 4 weeks ago, we had an incident in my house where a 17-year-old unlicensed driver drove his car through the front of our house. Like, completely traumatic experience during lockdown, as you can imagine, nightmare. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, but that's a big event that happened in my life, and I hadn't mentioned it to him. And it's just like, okay, so who are we talking to about this stuff if we can't even talk about it to our so-called best friends and best men and stuff like that? And we just had this conversation, and he was telling me about how it was really tough for him because his parents had COVID and his brother had COVID and so on and so forth. And then I was telling him about the situation that we had and how it was really tough to deal with that, plus homeschooling. And I was going through all my work issues at that point and things like that. And, retrospectively, it was probably too late, right? Because these events had happened. I just wish I'd picked up the phone and spoke to him at the time, because he didn't solve any of my problems. He just listened. And you know what? My wife also listened to me as well, but there was just something different about having that conversation with another guy. Because he could just relate to certain things, and I could relate to certain things. Like, he had to go and do all the shopping for his family because they couldn't go out, they were all isolating, so he had to go and do that. And he's got 3 young boys, and he was dealing with all the homeschooling at the same time, and his wife was dealing with like the younger son, and his older son sitting next to him. And it was just like, mate, I get it, I totally get where you're coming from, because it's exactly the same situation that I'm going through right now. And my wife's with one son and I'm with the other one, and it's like we can't get no work done during the day, and we have to then do it again in the evening. And it's just, I get it. And it was just the fact that I could say I get where he's coming from, or he can say he gets where I'm coming from. It just made me feel really good afterwards. And I'm just so glad I had that connection and that conversation with him. And it's made me determined to want to pick up the phone and speak to him more now. And, we both regret that the fact that it took us that long to be able to just pick up the phone and talk to each other, because we're busy, and that's not done intentionally in any way. It's just everyone's busy. But no one's really that busy that you can't pick up the phone and just say hello. So that's always a nice thing. But also, actually, it doesn't have to be someone that you know. I know someone that kind of had this practice, and I tried it a couple of times, and it was really rewarding, actually. But she, it was every Wednesday, and I think it was a Wednesday just because kind of it's like that hump day during the week. But every Wednesday morning, when she went to go and get her cup of coffee, she'd buy a coffee for the person that was in the queue behind her. And she's like, just, you should try it. And I was like, wow, okay. And I did try it. And I tell you what, it's so rewarding, because that person doesn't expect it, first of all. It's kind of like, you hear them kind of placing their coffee order. And when you're paying for yours, you say, oh, I also like to pay for that person as well. And they'll look at you and they'll be like, what have you just done there? And it's just a kind gesture. And, that person, just, you see the happiness on their face. You see that, oh, okay, what, there's good people in this world. There's no ulterior motive at all. I never spoke to that person ever again afterwards. But honestly, try it. Like, I know it's difficult right now because we can't go out and stuff, but next time we're able to go to coffee shops or whatever, try that, and you see it's so rewarding. And sometimes, who knows, that one gesture may lead to that person saying something to you or opening up to you about something that could change their life. Like, you don't know what that person's going through in their life. You don't know what stresses or what strains that they have. And that one gesture may just lift their mood and potentially be the difference between, life and death in the most extreme circumstances. So, we just need to do more stuff like that. More stuff like that is good.
Right, thank you for that, Biraj. I'm sure we could have easily gone on talking a lot longer as well. For time-wise, we've probably got to cut it short now. But yeah, I mean, you did touch on quite a lot of things there. Definitely, being able to open up amongst your own friends. Also, we'll put a link out to the group, your men's group, if you don't mind. So if anyone watching this does feel like, you know, they want to join the group, feel free to join the group as well. And yeah, thank you for your time, Biraj.
Yeah, no problems. Thank you again for allowing me to come on today and share my message as well. It's really appreciative, and yeah, I hope we can collectively change more lives through this. So thank you.